Expedition 33 has hit the gaming community hard, with tear-jerking writing, amazing characters, great visuals, and somehow they made the old turn-based JRPG gameplay fun and interactive by having you time your attacks for more damage on top of parrying and or dodging your opponent's attacks. And on top of this, they have some really interesting combat abilities for each character that make them feel more unique than a basic class system would. And today I'm going to be taking some of these characters and putting them into D&D. Dear God, what have I gotten myself into? Oh, and obvious possible spoilers and or heavy stuff ahead.
This too is your legacy.
In a way, it's yours too.
Now, Expedition 33 is fairly new, so before we get into any individual characters, we need some context for things, like what are expeditions, why is this one number 33, and of course, why is the party part of said expedition. And this all begins just about 67 years ago at year 100. This is when the city of Lumiere is split, cut off from the rest of the continent in an event called the Fracture, with a small part of the city being pulled off into the ocean to become an island, while the remains of the city left on the main continent are called Old Lumiere. This is also when things get, well, darker, as at the same time as the Fracture, a massive structure called the Monolith is formed and marked with a 100 by the Paintress. And at first, most people are too worried about everyone else that went missing during the Fracture to really care about the Monolith. But as the years go by and the Monolith begins to count down, there are more and more people vanishing with each passing Monolith year. And this event, where the Paintress appears and changes the countdown, is known as the Gommage, when anyone of the age on the Monolith is killed or gommage, dissipating into a cloud of petals. And here, on the day of the new year, is where we learn that the expeditions are an attempt to stop the Gommage, and this one, Expedition 33, is not the 33rd expedition, but the 52nd, since they skipped a few early on. But we also learn that no one has returned from an expedition, even those that went with more than 1 year left before the Gommage. And this also leads us to the first character for this team, the 32-year-old engineer that is Gustav. Now, we don't get a ton of backstory about these characters before the expeditions, a lot of their development happens during gameplay obviously, but we do know a bit. For instance, we know that Gustav is a talented engineer, not only working on several projects within the city to improve it, but also creating his own prosthetic arm. And with the help of Lune, he made a device that allows him and others to use the power of Pictos that I'm not going to get into here. And while working on one of these many projects, Gustav, along with a woman named Sophie, would fall in love. And while they both felt very strongly for each other, they would unfortunately eventually break up over a disagreement on having children or not, given the fact that in a few short years, both of them would be gommaged, leaving their children alone to a short life filled with fear and violence. Between this time and the start of the game though, Gustav and his sister Emma would adopt a young girl named Maelle. And 4 years later, on the day of the new year, Gustav and Sophie would rekindle their relationship, if only for a short time before her own gommage, along with everyone else of the same age matching the Monolith. From here things go pretty quickly, with Expedition 33 leaving for the main continent in yet another attempt to stop the Paintress. They leave with hope in their hearts and soon make landfall where... Oh no, Gustav, get out of there, man, run! I'm sure Gustav will be fine. Let's just let him rest for a bit and go over what all this means in the case of, well, making him as a D&D character. Now, obviously, Gustav, along with everyone else, are going to be humans. Well, unless I end up making Monako, which in this case I didn't, even though he is one of my favorite characters.
No distraction, son. I'm really busy beating up strangers.
Unfortunately, he's just a little bit too weird, but maybe I'll add him as a Patreon exclusive build, or I can do a part 2 for this video if it does well. Let's say like 15 to 20k views or more, and I'll do a part 2. Sounds good? Good. Now let's get back to Gustav. So yes, Gustav is going to be a human, and we know from his time in Lumiere that he is an engineer, building things and so on. So going off of that, I gave him the lucky feat for his human feat, and the engineer background for Arcana, Investigation, and the crafter feat, in case he needs to make any small trinkets on the trip for whatever reason. He's also a very smart guy and is actually fairly athletic all things considered, so I think a stat spread something like this should be a good fit, with a focus on int and strength, followed by dex, con, charisma, and just because he doesn't really need it, Gustav is going to be dumping wisdom, although I'm sure you could swap this with something else if you really needed to. Okay, let's go check on Gustav and see how he's doing. Oh no, you put that down, we're not having any of that here. Okay, so yeah, with that taken care of, Gustav is not having a good time. After all, they just arrived. They just made landfall when pretty much the entire expedition was wiped out by a single old man and a few monsters. And after waking up, Gustav wanders through the battlefield looking for any survivors, specifically Maelle, and after finding nothing, he tries to join his allies in the afterlife, only for Lune to stop him with 6 very important words. And Lune is a very important character that we will get to soon, don't worry. But this is also just about as far as I'm willing to cover story-wise. Obviously there's a ton more with meeting the Gestrels and stuff like that, but I really don't want to spoil anything too deep in the story, so instead we are going to move on to combat. Because not only does Gustav use both a sword and a gun, but his prosthetic arm also lets him mess with chroma a bit, chroma being this world's magic in a sense. And by using that to charge up his hand, he can make a big lightning punch that does a bunch of damage with overcharge. He can also buff himself and his allies, heal, which technically everyone can do, and has a few more lightning-based attacks. And overall, Gustav has a really good mix of martial and magical abilities. Plus, with him being as smart as he is and using that prosthetic arm, I think I have a pretty good idea here, which of course is going to start with an artificer. After all, working on all those different projects in the city, creating his arm and his weird picto device, I just think it fits really well. He can infuse magic into items like his sword or armor with the feature of the same name, and at 3rd level he can fully get his arm with the Armorer subclass and its arcane armor via the Thunder Gauntlet attack. This also gives him some pretty fitting spells like Thunder Wave and Shatter at level 5 along with extra attack. But the big thing here is going to be the level 9 feature Armor Modification, letting Gustav put a bunch of different infusions on his armor. And these are, well, mostly up to you, but I would say these ones are a good pick. Oh, and note, this is still using the old 2014 version of Artificer since the 2024 version is still in AU. They really should have just made this a base class, but whatever, I'll use it when I can. Now there's one more thing at level 9 of Artificer that I really want for his overcharge attack. And thankfully that comes directly from the armor spell list, the 3rd level spell, Lightning Bolt. And yes, the damage is technically less than Fireball, but it's the same amount of dice, 86 lightning damage, which isn't bad. And with the Warcaster feat for better concentration on top of an ASI for his intelligence, his spell DC is going to be as good as it gets. Plus with the next class I want Gustav to dip into, he should be able to do even more. And because part of his kit focuses on hitting things with a sword that he summons from thin air, I think the best thing to complement his Armor Artificer is going to be a jump into the Eldritch Knight Fighter, giving him some much needed D10s for hit die, but also the dueling fighting style, Second Wind, and War Bond, letting him bond to a weapon, making it so that he cannot be disarmed and he can summon it whenever he wants. And of course, with gameplay focus on dodging and parrying everything, I kinda had to give our boy here, as well as someone else in this team, the defensive duelist feat for a +1 dex and the ability to parry away attacks once per turn. But going off how many attacks some of these things gets, Gustav might need more than 1 parry per turn. Gustav is a great character, and while he's not perfect, he's funny, takes charge, and makes tough choices when he needs to. And I wish I'd gone a bit more into detail on him as a character, but to avoid any major spoilers for people still playing or that haven't started yet, for now, this is where we're going to leave it for Gustav.
Look, if death approaches, I want you to run. No, promise me. Run. Especially if we meet the man from the beach. We can't face him. You see him, you run.
Only if you do the same.
Oh, I'm running as soon as I see a strand of white hair, trust me. You won't even see me, I'm running so fast.
Oh, please, you're an old man. I can outrun you any day.
Yeah, right. There was a time when 30 was young, you know?
Sure.
Our next character is the party's Mage of Swords, and the same woman that saved Gustav from himself, Lune. Something feels weird.
The party shakes their pursuers amidst the discovery of great powers. To make up for lost time, they risk hiring a coach to secret them the rest of the way to the capital.
Hey, Metal Atlas here. The first time I heard more from Metaphor Refantasia, well, I had a few reactions. One, I'm kind of a huge Greg Chun fanboy. He's in several of my favorite roles, including Yagami from Judgment, and where I fell in love with him as Kaname Date from AI Somnium Files. but the way he does the narration here reminds me exactly why I fell in love with D&D in the first place. Yes, sue me, I got into D&D because of Critical Role, and the way that Matt Mercer painted the picture, like I could imagine I was there with the party, experiencing the action and story right along with the characters. Most people would get upset because, you know, he's a professional and you can't expect casual games to feel anything like that. Well, until now. As you know, we've been doing a month-long partnership with Describe, and I personally asked GMD for this section because Describe has made me fall in love with D&D all over again. Most people struggle with painting a picture, really getting the right adjectives. Even I'd say something like, you find yourself alone in a grass field, the wind blowing as you feel the sun softly warm your skin, the salt from your sweat stings on the open wounds from the battle you just survived. I think that sounds okay, but I also took some time to think it up and didn't come up with it on the spot. So how's this instead? The last foe falls, and in time, the din of battle recedes. Your body aches, your injuries becoming evident as your awareness returns, and yet, you live. Blood drips from the weapon in your hands. You take in great lungfuls of air, sweat shining on your face as you find your allies standing all around you, breathing just as hard. You nod to one another, thankful to be alive, thankful to see your foes at your feet. The battle was hard fought, hard won, but now you each stand victorious. Doesn't that sound way better? Describe has so many descriptions for things that you can do everything from trying to convey how eerily the dark cave feels, to the sounds of a pub, to how the fireball incantation should go. There are just so many options that you can find whatever to fill your taste, and more being added every day from people who are actually good at writing and describing things. And with the Celestial subscription, you can make requests for anything that you might want to say that you can't find. I've always wanted to push myself to be a better DM and really make people remember the session, and if you want to step up your game without trying to become a prodigy or professional, Describe should be your first choice for trying something new to bring to your table. Our code, GAMEMASTERSGUIDE, gets you an extra 30 days on whatever subscription you decide to try, and there's also a free trial period that lets you access things before you decide to fully commit. Anyways, sorry for taking up your time, and I hope you found this as exciting as I did.
Okay. That was weird. I've never had that happen before. But where was I? Oh, right. Lune. Lune is the mage or wizard of the expedition, or at least what's left of it. After years of research and study that her parents, or maybe even their parents, started, she's learned how to control and use chroma herself, allowing her to create powerful elemental spells, summoning fire, lightning, ice, and moving the very earth. But of course, before this, she simply lived in Lumiere City with her family, mother, father, and 2 older siblings. During this time, she would meet Gustav via her older brother, who was in a relationship with Gustav's sister, and while they weren't the best of friends, they got along just fine until Monolith Year 45, when Lune learns of the failure of the previous year's expedition, the very same one her parents had gone on. After this, Lune dives into her work, cutting off her friends and only focusing on her chroma research and her music, as despite everything that's happened, Lune managed to become a well-known musician within Lumiere City. Until the day of Expedition 33's launch, where she not only helps chart the course, but chooses their landing zone, the very same landing site of the first ever expedition, Expedition 0, which happens to have been the only expedition to ever be reported to have any survivors. And she figured that maybe this spot was simply safer or had a more direct route to the monolith. So this is where Expedition 33 chose to land, and also where most of their lives were cut short. And while Lune calms Gustav down, let's take a look at her sheet. Again, Lune, like everyone else, is a human, and this time I decided to give her a little bit of healing via the Magic Initiate feat, just so that she can get Cure Wounds. It's not a lot of healing, but it's something. And funnily enough, Lune actually gets this feat again, but with the wizard flavoring from her sage background. That one seemed to fit best given how much she goes into her work and how hard she studies and researches stuff. And given all of that, I think her stats are super straightforward. She's a researcher, a scientist, so she is going to focus on intelligence, with dexterity being second for her guitar and dodging since she wears no armor. And yes, I know technically charisma is used for any performance checks like playing guitar, but good luck getting any actual music to come out of that thing if you can't control your fingers. Anyways, the other stats aren't as important, but here they are. Now, something I need to point out here about Lune and how she goes about fighting is that she has a really interesting mechanic called stains, where if she uses certain abilities, it generates different stains, and other abilities consume those stains to get extra effects. Also, kind of makes me think of the Recluse from Night Rain, which I have totally been playing a normal amount of, I promise. And as much as I would love to put this into the build, it's not really something that can be done in 5e as far as I'm aware. If I'm wrong, go ahead and tell me in the comments. I would love to see what your ideas are for the stains kind of system. So in place of that, I decided to just make Lune a fully elemental wizard, which in this case means the Evoker or Evocation School, letting her add her intelligence modifier to the damage of her cantrips with Potent Cantrip at level 3, and fully avoiding hitting her allies with those massive AoEs with Sculpt Spell. But really for the actual wizard features, that's kind of it. Wizards are surprisingly simple when it comes to this. Do you see how few features they get? Look at this. So let's speed through these and get to the good stuff real quick. Level 10 gives Lune Empowered Evocation, doing the same thing as Potent Cantrip, but for full spells. And at level 14 she gets Overchannel, letting her deal max damage instead of rolling on any spell of 5th level or lower. And while normally she can only do this once per day, she does have the option of taking 2d12 necrotic damage per spell level to do it again. So if she really needed to nuke something, she could do it at the expense of 10d12 of necrotic damage that she cannot resist or ignore in any way. Also, the damage she takes per spell level goes up if she wants to use it a third time. And because Lune is actually a pretty high level compared to Gustav, she is also going to get Spell Mastery at level 18, letting her take 2 spells, 1 level 1 spell and 1 level 2 spell, and cast them for free whenever she wants, forever. For this, I went with Absorb Elements and Scorching Ray. And with all of that stuff out of the way, let's take a look at some of her other spells, and see which ones she can actually maximize. Now, since wizards get a stupid amount of spells, I kinda just tried to stuff as many elemental spells into her spell list as I could, since she's pretty equally split among them. So for her fire spells, she has these ones here, starting with Firebolt, Burning Hands, Scorching Ray, Flaming Sphere, and of course the classic Fireball, Flaming Shield, and some higher level ones like Incendiary Cloud, and I technically did add Firestorm here even though it's a druid only spell, but come on, it's a big fire spell, it's fitting enough. And ending off with Fireball's bigger, scarier older brother, Meteor Swarm, easily her hardest hitting spell. And because Wizards of the Coast loves fire damage so much, there are a ton more of these ones than the other elements. Water hardly even gets a passing glance, but she does get some good spells for them regardless. Like Rhyme's Binding Ice, Lightning Bolt, Erupting Earth, Ice Storm, and of course Cone of Cold. There's also Chain Lightning, Freezing Sphere, and Move Earth. Wizards do not get a lot of Earth spells. At least that one makes more sense to be a druid only kind of thing, it's more of their domain. But with all these spells, Lune really shouldn't have any issues getting around resistances or anything like that. But just to be safe, I did give her Elemental Adept 3 times, for fire, cold, and lightning damage, plus 1 ASI for int and wisdom. This also happens to max out her intelligence, and of course on top of that, her spell saving throw DC. Now with all that covered, these spells here are the ones she has that can be maximized. Narrowing that down further leaves us with these ones that are actually worth using the feature on, being Cone of Cold, which hits for 8d8, normally around 32 damage, instead dealing a solid 46 damage in a 60-foot cone. Wall of Fire is another good one, a 4th level spell hitting for 48 damage at level 5, but also lasting for up to 1 minute. And of course Fireball or Lightning Bolt, both hitting for around 10d6 when upcast to 5th level for 60 damage per creature hit. And while she can only do this once without any drawbacks, Lune can still blast off powerful spells without Overchannel. Meteor Swarm on its own hits for 40d6, or an average of 120 damage, so she's not going to be pressed for any amount of damage anytime soon. And with all this power at her disposal, maybe, just maybe, Expedition 33 will be the last one and the first to stop the Gommage.
Lune. The others.
I know. We're the only ones left. You don't get to die.
We're already dead. Look around, look.
This is not a foregone conclusion. When one falls, we continue. Get up. We need to find a safer place. There are Nevrons around. This is not the place. The Lumina converter seems intact. It's about time we test it in real conditions.
Putain.
That leaves us with only one more spot for the party. Since the party size in Expedition 33 is 3 people, I figured that would be a good number to call it on. And for this last character, we have Gustav's adopted daughter/sister figure, Maelle, who until she was taken in by Gustav and his sister Emma was kinda just floating around from family to family after her parents accidentally had her only 3 years before the Gommage. This understandably had a huge impact on Maelle as she grew up, and her connection with Gustav was one of the only things she really had. So when he was about to head off on Expedition 33, she decided she might as well go with him even though she was only 16. And things only get well, let's say weirder from here. But for the sake of not spoiling everything, and I do mean literally everything, we are going to cut the story here. Obviously, she meets up with Gustav and Lune after the incident at the landing site, and continues the expedition with them. Eventually meeting Monako and Ciel, who again, if this video does well enough, I will cover them in a part 2. So, to real quick get through Maelle's setup, her feat from human is Savage Attacker, since she does some ridiculous damage in-game, and for her background, I thought the Wayfarer would be a good match for her childhood, a time in her life when she didn't really feel like she belonged anywhere. And this does come with the Lucky feat, so she can reroll any misses if she needs to, and some really high dex. In-game she uses a rapier, or at least it looks like a rapier, and she strikes me as a very nimble fighter in general with her dodging and parrying. Which leads me into how she works in-game. And while her mechanics are a lot easier to replicate than the stains from Lune, Maelle's stances aren't necessarily easy. With 3 stances, or technically 4 if you count not being in a stance as a stance, those being defensive, giving her increased defenses at the cost of lower damage, offensive, upping her damage output but also increasing the amount of damage she takes, and virtuoso, which just deals a ton of damage with no defensive drawbacks. Her various skills swap her between stances, some attacks adding fire to her sword, or making them take more damage from fire. So question is, how do we do this? Well, given that D&D does not have a stance-based system like this, which it totally should, it would be really cool, the next best thing is to replicate the effects of her stances as best we can. So something that makes her harder to hit, something that ups her damage, and something that ups her damage even more. Oh, and a little bit of fire. And after messing around with a few different ideas, including a Kensei Monk and or Paladin option I looked at, I settled on this build, which starts with just a few levels in Battlemaster Fighter. Starting off with the defense fighting style upping her AC, and then getting the parry maneuver at level 3, letting her reduce incoming damage, but also upping her AC with the evasive footwork maneuver for a defensive stance. Which is upped even further at level 4 with one of my favorite feats for these characters, Defensive Duelist. Yes, I know I give this out to a ton of characters, but make more feats, Wizards of the Coast, and maybe I'll have some more interesting feats to give out. Anyways, complaining about feats aside, that is already a good lineup in terms of defense. With a breastplate level 5, she could have an AC sitting somewhere from 17 at base, all the way up to 28, and that is only going to get higher as she gets higher in level, so we'll take a look at her AC again near the end of the build. Now in terms of offense, Maelle has a few options. Obviously a few maneuvers give her extra damage, and that's fine, but I think 2 feats are going to do very well for her here. First, at level 6, to cover her fire attacks, she is going to take another favorite of mine, Gift of the Chromatic Dragon, so she can add 1d4 fire damage onto every attack she makes. Not a ton of damage, but damage is damage. But even more than that, at level 8 is the Piercer feat, adding 1d8 damage to any crit she hits. And yeah, Maelle's not a crit fishing build, but it does still up her damage when she does land a crit. And that's fine, but I think we can do a little more. This time for Virtuoso. And to do that, Maelle is going to take a short break from Fighter and take 3 levels in the College of the Sword Bard, specifically for the Blade Flourish feature, giving Maelle a boost to her speed when she attacks, and letting her choose between 3 different flourishes. Defensive, adding damage and upping her AC by the die rolled. Slashing, meaning she hits a second target nearby the first one with the same damage as the die rolled. Or Mobile Flourish, letting her again deal extra damage, but also pushing the target away and letting Maelle move as a reaction. And with all these adding damage on top of other effects, this is really my best bet for Virtuoso, since again, there's no real stance-like ability I can use. And while Maelle isn't much of a spellcaster, being a sword bard does give her a few spells, and I think these ones fit well enough. Like the new True Strike, which is actually good, adding extra damage, and no longer wasting her turn with the garbage that the 2014 True Strike was. Along with this, she has spells like Fairy Fire to mark her enemies, Long Strider, Healing Word for a little boost, and Enhance Ability just because she needed a second level spell, and this was the most her, I guess. But with only 3 levels in Bard, let's finish off Maelle's build with her remaining levels in Fighter. And these levels are pretty important for her build, with Indomitable helping her pass saves, a second extra attack being, well, another attack, putting her at 3 now, her superiority die going up to d10s at level 10, along with a level 12 ASI for her con, and another at level 14, putting her con at 18. So despite being pretty small, she's actually going to have some really solid HP. And lastly for Maelle, level 15 and the Relentless feature, letting Maelle once per turn use a d8 instead of a d10 for a maneuver without actually using up any of her die, putting Maelle at level 15 Fighter and level 3 Bard for a total of 18, meaning she has a +6 proficiency bonus. And remember how I mentioned before that her AC was pretty high and it was only going to go higher as she got higher in level? Well, right now, with Maelle using her defensive fighting style and a breastplate, she starts off with an AC of 17, going up to 23 with Defensive Duelist. And then she can add another d8 with Evasive Footwork, meaning her AC can be as high as 31. Or if she wants to use a full d10 without Relentless, it can go up to 33. And no, this was not intentional. How does this keep happening?
You can't keep getting away with it! You can't keep getting away with it!
And while her defenses are surprisingly high, her damage does not fall behind. She is a fighter after all, so with 6 attacks, each one dealing 1d8 plus 7, with a maneuver on each one and a blade flourish on 2 of them, that is 6d8 plus 6d10 plus 2d6 plus 36, for an average of 96 damage or 104 with a crit, and a max of 164. Now this is all in one go, pretty much using up all of her resources, but with how much health some of these enemies have, she's really gonna need it. Maelle is a great character and goes through so much more than I am willing to spoil in this video. Just go play the game if you want to know. I did my best to leave out any huge character spoilers here, so some of them are going to be missing late game abilities and stuff like that that could potentially fully change their builds. And for now, that's Maelle, and that is Expedition 33.
That's a lot of dead Nevrons.
Who did?
I don't see
I
any.
think they mean us.
They must be Gestrels. They're cute, but they're idiots.
If you guide us to your village,
Claro, maricón.
Guide us to your village, and maybe he'll make you something better.
Wait, what are you?
¿Quieres sacar equipo?
Trust me, I hate liars.
Okay.
You're better with gestrels than humans.
They're less complicated.
Hey, just real quick, want to thank everyone as per usual, my testers for looking over these builds and giving it a good old quality check, my patrons for supporting the channel, and of course our current sponsor, Describe. I feel like I didn't actually run an ad for them in this video, but it's there, so you know what, that's fine. As long as you guys remember to go check them out and use our code GAMEMASTERSGUIDE, and our other code GMG for our partner Homie and the Dude. They both have amazing stuff for your games, so go check them out. They will help so much. But that is going to do it for today. I will see you all next time, and as always, have a wonderful day.